With restaurants reopening across America, here's what owners, staff, and customers need to know in order to serve and dine safely. Step 1. Reevaluate your business model.
The less people that are interacting closely together at one time, the lower your risk. Making sure these shifts all have the same employees work on them. And then you have kind of different sets of shifts. That way, if there's ever a case that crops up, you can have that shift go off and possibly be under watch for a couple of days, and you bring on the next shift, rather than having all of your employees interact together and then you don't know which ones are at risk and which ones aren't. Changing operating hours. Some have been extending their hours. That way they can see more people, but less people at one time. So it works against the density. On the other side of that, if they've cut the time, it gives them more time on the back end or in between to make sure that they are able to really implement and completely disinfect all their surfaces and clean well. Break down the different activities your business does. While a large bar or a large restaurant might not be able to open it itself up entirely, if you can open up portions, keeping just delivery options, or maybe doing delivery and then outdoor dining only or outdoor drinking only, I think that's the way we're slowly going to get back.
Step 2. Train staff before reopening doors.
Training is huge because, if your employees are showing up to work and they haven't yet been briefed on what your expectations are, you get a little bit of chaos. The key is to walk just through the complete flow of your workflow from front door to the back. We want to make sure that we've got, some form of employee screening, whether that's a self-screening before you come to work or when you arrive at work, some form of social distancing for the employees while they're at work. And there's all sorts of shades of social distancing. How do I wear a face covering when I'm working in a hot cook line? How do the servers get the food out to the table? And how do they be able to seat then the guests? And so to not have that communication and that really well thought out workflow, that's a pitfall to be sure.
Step 3. Close self-serve options.
It's less about the distancing at the buffet and just more about the idea of exposed to food being out there. Really, we haven't found COVID to be a foodborne illness yet. But the regulations and the guidances and the guidelines for reopening, that abundance of caution that has to be taken.
Step 4. Go contactless or provide single-use options.
Any object that was handed from person to person to person is kind of being eliminated now. You're not going to see the little hand buzzers that we used to have. Think of your favorite fast casual dining restaurant that has the big, thick menu. Those are going to go away. You might get a disposable one. You might have a barcode when you check in that says, boom, there you go. If you're used to sitting down at the table and the table is set and there's a plate and there's silverware, glasses, none of that's going to be on the table. We seat you, we bring out the table settings. It's kind of front door all the way until you start eating. It's going to change your experience.
Step 5. Facilitate open communication with customers.
A lot of restaurants that are able to kind of have some form of contact tracing in place, whether that's people signing in and providing an email or a phone number as they come in, I think would be advisable to do, because that way, if you hear about an exposure your restaurant has, it's very easy for the restaurant or the bar to be able to send a list off to the people that were there that night. They don't have to hold responsibility of following up with them, but if they can just let them know there was a potential exposure, that could go a long way in helping. People want to know what restaurants, what bars, what other businesses are doing. So as much transparency as possible, whether that's through the various social media outlets and letting their clients and customers know this is what we've done in order to reduce the risk, in order to protect you and our employees, has been really helpful, but particularly with the confidence.
So before you reopen your establishment, think before you enact major changes to your business. These options don't require huge overhead to implement, but they all help reduce the risk, especially if you're able to tie them all together. These changes also require a level of compliance from your customers, and whenever alcohol is in the mix, that may decrease slightly. So keep safety at the forefront of your mind when implementing new guidelines.